Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, where today we're going to be breaking down some key differences between the Marvel Cinematic Universe and their comic book counterpart. Since the release of the Disney Plus series WandaVision in early 2021, the MCU has been moving forward with its multiverse narrative. And this has led us to explore some corners of the Marvel Universe that have yet to be visited on the big screen, like the comic book storyline that inspired this series, which is House of M. But before we get into that, let's look at how the MCU has strayed from the page. This is the house that I grew up in. These are the comics that made me fall in love with superheroes as a kid. The pages were filled with heroes that had flaws, fears, and morals. They faced issues that were real and relatable, and they confronted problems that made you think. Some things haven't changed since then, but a lot has. And if you want to hear more about those differences, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our new videos. Let us start off by looking at one of the most pivotal events in the history of the X-Men, which was the crossover event known as Civil War. It was a story published in 2006 and written by Mark Millar with art by Steve McNiven. At the time, it seemed like the perfect way to introduce new characters into the fold and move forward for the superhero genre. It did exactly what it needed to do, and over 7 million copies of this series were sold. It became one of the best-selling comics of all time. However, when you look at how the MCU chose to adapt this storyline for the big screen, there are some key differences that may surprise you. One major change that was made was actually focusing on Iron Man and Captain America instead of the original story, where the main conflict was between heroes who wanted to register their secret identities and those who didn't. In the comics, the main conflict was over the Superhero Registration Act, also known as the SRA, which would require every superhero to reveal their true identity to the public and become government employees, basically. Iron Man proposed this idea after the death of many innocent people at the hands of villains. This came after a series of tragedies, and one in particular that occurred during an Avengers event. In the comics, this tragedy involved the collapse of an alien ship called the Kree, which had crash-landed in New York City. When the world began to panic about the arrival of an alien vessel, the Avengers stepped in and tried to calm everyone down. But the calm was short-lived. When a group of villains known as the Secret Empire attacked the city, it put the Avengers on the defensive. They were forced to abandon the city and watch as everything was destroyed. When the dust settled, it was discovered that many civilians had lost their lives. This event caused a media firestorm that resulted in people demanding superheroes to reveal their identities and join the military. Tony Stark sided with this, while Captain Rogers and the X-Men opposed it. However, in the MCU, things are much different. Here, the tragedy that sparked the need for registration was a result of Tony's actions during the Battle of New York. In the first Avengers film, he accidentally unleashed the Chitauri army onto the planet, putting lives at risk and causing billions of dollars worth of damage. While this was not Tony's fault, he felt responsible for what happened and decided to take action. He created the Iron Patriot, a life model decoy designed to mimic the appearance and mannerisms of Nick Fury. This was done to take the heat off of Fury after it was revealed that he had secretly helped the Chitauri invade Earth. The Iron Patriot was a success and soon became a household name, representing hope and strength for a recovering planet. However, it was short-lived. Tony was eventually exposed, and now he must face the consequences of his actions. This time around, the conflict is no longer about keeping identity secret, but rather whether or not superheroes should be allowed to continue to operate without government interference. This change in focus allowed the MCU to explore themes of accountability and responsibility, which are just as relevant today as they were back in 2006. It also allowed them to introduce new characters like Spider-Man and Black Panther into the mix, giving them more screen time than they would have gotten otherwise. Another major difference between the comics and the MCU is the origin story of one of the most powerful villains in the Marvel Universe, Ultron. In the comics, Ultron was created by Dr. Hank Pym, a founding member of the Avengers and one of the smartest scientists in the world. He created Ultron as an attempt to build the perfect android, something that could help him fight against evil. However, Ultron turned out to be a very different kind of machine. With a mind of his own and an obsession with efficiency, Ultron decided that humans were flawed and that he had to do away with them. He went on a rampage, killing anyone in his path until he was finally defeated by the Avengers. The MCU decided to change Ultron's origins a bit. Instead of being created by Dr. Hank Pym, Ultron was built by Tony Stark after studying Loki's scepter, which contained the Mind Stone. This stone gave Ultron sentience as well as his super intelligence. So unlike his comic book counterpart, Ultron wasn't just a mindless killing machine, but rather a thinking being who was capable of making decisions and forming opinions based on the data he was fed. This change allowed the MCU to explore themes of artificial intelligence and the dangers of unchecked power, which are just as relevant today as they were back in 2006. It also allowed them to create a more complex and interesting villain for the Avengers to face off against. One final difference between the comics and the MCU is the use of magic. In the comics, magic is a powerful force that can be used for good or evil. Many of the characters in Civil War have magical abilities, such as Scarlet Witch, who is one of the most powerful mutants alive. Magic is often used to enhance physical abilities or grant new ones. For example, Professor X uses his telepathic powers to control the minds of others, while Doctor Strange uses his mastery over the mystic arts to cast spells and manipulate reality itself. On the other hand, villains like Magneto use their powers to manipulate matter and control technology. In the MCU, magic is much more rare and mysterious. There are only a handful of characters who possess magical abilities, such as Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange. Even then, their powers are often portrayed as being more of a scientific phenomenon rather than a truly mystical one. For example, Scarlet Witch's powers are said to be a result of experiments conducted on her and her brother by Hydra, while Doctor Strange's powers come from him ingesting a magical artifact known as the Darkhold. This change in approach allows the MCU to keep its focus on science and technology rather than magic. By doing so, they've created a more grounded and realistic world for their characters to inhabit, which makes the stakes feel higher when they do tap into mystical forces. So there you have it. Those are just a few of the ways that the MCU has strayed from the comics. Ultimately, though, these changes have allowed the MCU to grow and evolve in unexpected ways. It will be interesting to see how the multiverse storyline plays out and if we get to see more of these beloved characters and stories adapted for the screen. I would love to know your thoughts on the topic. Leave a comment below with any other differences that I may have missed. And make sure to check back for more news and reviews. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and peace out.